They say racing was invented when the second car was built. But here in India, racing has been reserved to the few, to the privileged, to a small community of gearheads and adrenaline junkies. I'm Justin Singh, the youngest national champion of the saloon car category in the National Racing Championship. And I get confused when people ask me, what makes your cars different than what we drive on the street? How do you build them? Are they faster? What makes it different than a normal road car? They look the same, from the outside at least. So I decided I'll make this video series educating all of us about what racing in India is, how race cars are built, what's the different forms of racing, and how you can build your own race car. So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a circuit race. And to help you understand that, I have these Hot Wheel cars. In a race, you take 6 cars, maybe 10, maybe 20. You put them on a racetrack. You take 6, maybe 10, maybe 20 drivers in them, and the lights go green, and all these cars set off, racing each other, bumping into each other, completing laps of the race, and the first car which finishes across the line wins the race. Now that's separate from rallying, and many people confuse racing and rallying. In a rally, cars will be lined up and will be left at an interval of 2 minutes, and the car which finishes the course in the least amount of time wins. There is no actual wheel-to-wheel racing here, even though sometimes there is, but for the most part, they're two different disciplines. So what are the different kinds of racing? When I talk about racing, everyone automatically thinks about Formula 1. This is how a Formula 1 car looks like now. It's got open wheels, lots of aero, downforce. Formula 1 cars or any open wheel race cars, they're called open wheels because their wheels don't have fenders above them. These cars are built for racing from the ground up. You have open wheel race cars, and on the other hand, you have a closed wheel race car. The fenders are covered. These cars are usually street cars which are heavily modified just for race use, and that's what I'm building. So why did I choose the Honda City specifically for this super stock build? Well, Hondas are Japanese, and the Japanese make reliable cars. And when you're racing, 10,000 kilometers on the road is almost as good as 100 kilometers on the racetrack. Everything is pushed to the limit. Your engine, your tires, your brakes, your chassis, everything in the car is pushed to the absolute limit. And you know about Honda reliability. Other cars may heat and overheat, but if you see in India, the most raced cars are either Polos, Volkswagens, or Cities, Hondas. Gone are the days of the Maruti Steams and all, which brings me to my second point, lightness. The most important thing in racing is lightness. Now from physics, we all know about inertia. Anything that has weight has higher inertia, which means it takes harder to stop, harder to accelerate, harder to corners. And in cars, it also brings more wear to your tires, your brakes, and all the components of your car. So having a light car is really important. And I'm going to show what I've done to help with the lightness. Now, before we go on to lightness and all, I want to mention another thing that's very important. Whenever you're buying a car for racing, you need to make sure everything is in top nick. It's not possible for all of us to buy brand new cars and start racing them because that's really expensive. Now here are all the parts have gotten changed. You can see lower arms are here. You've got shock absorbers, brake pads, brake discs, clutches, and all of that stuff. Basic stuff that you need to get changed if you're going to go racing, because all these parts are going to go through a lot of stress and wear, and you need to have them in spare as well. Like I said, 10,000 kilometers on the road is as good as just 100 kilometers on the street. You go through brakes, you go through clutches, you go through everything like that because you're always on the limit. The engine is always at the red line. You're always braking at the last moment. you're shifting as fast as you can. And that's why all of this is really important. Lightness equals greatness, and for that we've done a few changes here. Now there's a mess inside the car right now. All stuff is just lying here, but you can see there is no dashboard in the car. Everything that's not to use of us, for us, is removed. There's a steering wheel, there's a speedometer, and that's it. The row cards are also removed, but remember guys, this is a project. This car is not built yet. I only got it a couple of months ago. When you're building a race car, you don't have a booklet to go off or just an easy guide to follow. Everything is a bit trial and error. It's a lot of research, it's a lot of development, it's a lot of trial and error. It looks very glamorous, but it is not very easy. So there is still a lot of work which will go on the car. There's still a lot of weight we can lose. According to the regulations, we can change a few body parts, change them for composite parts, fiber parts, which will help us, get the weight further down. You see in the back, there are no rear seats. There's a few spare parts lying around. I just got the car from Honda, but we try and save weight wherever we can, and there's still a long way to go. This car is still in its initial stages, not ready to hit the racetrack, but in a few months, few weeks, it will be, and I'll show you guys all the updates too. Now, there aren't a lot of race modifications done to this car, and you may have noticed all of this scaffolding going around here. Now, this is a roll cage. I posted a video of my first race car. It was a Baleno RS online, and people had no clue what this is. Now, a roll cage is the heart of the chassis of the car, of any race car or any rally car too. Any serious racing, you need to have these. It's not an option. You need to get a roll cage. And like I showed you, there are regulations for building the car, but there are another separate set of regulations just for the roll cage. These pipes need to be really strong. All these triangles add strength. You can see there's a lot of it going on behind here. If you come here, you can see these plates. These are welded into the chassis and then they're bolted down. There's plates here, there is a plate here. There are lots of plates which helps add into the torsional rigidity of the car. Roll cages in the front too. If you see on the hood of the car, on the roof of the car, you can see this cross member. So basically a roll cage, if you have a car with a roll cage, you can flip it 10 times, and paired with a FIA seat and harness, you can also make sure if you have an FIA seat and harness and you have a roll cage, you can flip the car 10 times and most of the times you come out harmless. And if you do that in a normal car, then you're probably going to end up dead. So that's why having a roll cage, having a good roll cage is really important. Roll cage not only adds safety to the car, but it makes it a lot more rigid. So when you going across corners and all, it feels a lot more, it feels like one piece. Feels more balanced, feels more rigid, and that's what you want when you're turning, cornering at high speeds on the limit of the tires, limit of grip. You want the car to be feeling like one piece, feeling stiff and not soft. You don't want to be catching the car, you don't want to be understeering, oversteering. You want it to be planted and reliable, and you want the car to listen to you. The only downside of the roll cage is it adds about 50-70 kgs of weight, but that is something that you can't change because having safety is really important in racing, and race cars usually are much more safer than road cars because right now I don't have the FIA seats installed or the harness because this car, as I said, is still a project and we're still working on it, and we can't get everything done at once. It takes time, takes money, takes a lot of effort. So as of now, this roll cage is all we have, and throughout the stage we're going to do a lot of different stuff. First we're going to do roll cage, then we're going to put the seats in, then we're going to tune the engine. You must have heard of ECU tuning. That's what we are allowed in our category. We are allowed to tune the engine, but just the ECU, just reflash the ECU, and we're going to put it on the dyno. and we're going to see how much more power we can build out of it. We can build an exhaust as well for the car. So we're going to put an exhaust, we're going to put a reflashed ECU, make a custom tune for the car, and unlike all the other stuff you've seen where you just take a thing and just plug and play, it's not going to be like that. We're going to make a tune for the car just specifically for the racetrack, because a tune for the road will be very different from a tune from the racetrack. When you're driving on the road, you barely pushing all the time. On a race car, your foot is always down to the floor. Along with that, you can see the car is really high up, and that is the main difference between a race car and a road car. It is suspension. Not more than power. What matters, especially when we are racing here in India, we only race at Madras Motor Racetrack, and that track is very technical. So having a good suspension is most important. The suspension is the most important part of the car. Now we can't change the dampers. The dampers have to be original, but we can modify that existing damper. But what we can do is put racing springs on the car, and that's also what we'll be doing. So we're going to put springs on the car, we're going to make it low, we're going to make it faster, give it more horsepower. We're going to make it lighter. There's still a lot of weight we can lose, and let's see how it goes out. Apart from all the car stuff, there is also some other stuff we're going to add, which helps in driver development, which helps you understand where you're losing time on a lap, where you're gaining time, and helps you keep track of all the engine temperatures and all of the car, coolant temperatures. This is a AIM Solo 2 DL. This looks very tiny, but it's very powerful. You can connect it to the brain of your car, which is the ECU, through a CAN port, and it will read all the sensors of the car. It will read how much steering input you're giving, how much brake pressure, how much where you're using clutch, what gear you're in, how much accelerator you're using, and you can configure it in a lot of ways, and you can plug it into your laptop after a session. It's GPS based. It gives you all the data you need, so that you can compare comparative lap times. Okay, if I'm faster in this lap, then you will be able to become more competitive. You will be faster, and you'll just be able to put lap times one after the other, similar to each other. So this is something we're going to put. We're going to put it right here, weld it onto the car. There's a bracket for it. So there's a lots of small stuff we're going to be doing to the car. The roll cage and the weight reduction is just a start, and of course changing all the parts which we know get worn and torn through regular driving. This car has done 40,000 kilometers, so it's pretty fine. You want to get a car which is not very high mileage, because the money you spend getting a car which is low mileage, you'll save. Instead of getting a car which is very high mileage but it's cheap, you'll end up changing all the parts in the car, and you'll end up having failures and all that. So you want to look for a car which is worked upon, the parts are available. You can't go buy a Ford or something, the company is not there, or a Chevrolet or something which company doesn't want to sell you parts. You want to buy something where you can get parts easily, you can get parts from abroad, you can get specific racing parts as well, and something that's reliable, something that's it's not going to break the bank, of course, according to your budget. But yeah, that's about it. You want to get something that's well kept also. You don't want to get something that's used and abused. You want to get a good car, so you have to spend less time building the car and more time on the track learning the car and going faster and improving. And that's all for this video. This is part 1 of the series, and we're going to be back with part 2 with many more modifications and new stuff to learn. So that's all for part 1 of this series. Even with these small incremental changes, just taking some weight out, putting in a roll cage, this car is still on 10-year-old tires, and we got a 0 to 100 time of 8.5 seconds for a Honda City with stock engine, nothing done, no tires. That's pretty good. So just small changes makes a lot of difference. Like, you could have gone with the tune, but you couldn't have gotten this performance. So when we go for the tune, we maybe go even faster. There's a lot of stuff into it. You can get into. There's a lot of stuff you can get into. And if you have any questions, I'll leave my Instagram down below, and you can go ahead and ask me anything you want. Leave a comment, whatever you feel like saying. If you want to ask any questions or you have any doubts, or maybe what car would you choose if you wanted to build a super stock of your own. You can find also the super stock regulations down in the description. You can have a look. It'll help you decide on your decision. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.